What's going on, everybody? I'm your pal, Jordan Gonzalez.
And I'm your other pal, Ricky Liordi.
And on this week's episode, we had track superstar Marissa Papaconstantinou. And I'm saying that name because Ricky can't pronounce a long Greek name. Awesome conversation with Marissa. Truly an inspiring athlete. She is a Canadian Paralympian. But so much more than that, and you know, someone with so much ambition and drive and determination, and you know, just doing really great things, and has some really big goals for herself. Rick, what do you think?
Yeah, someone who's considered a vet in her sport at the young age of 21. We know she's got a lot of exciting things coming up, and if you listen to the episode, you'll hear some of those dreams that she has.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun conversation. I think it was great. And Marissa, good luck on the road to Tokyo. All right, my pal. LFG. Okay, I think it should be good.
I think so. After our couple minutes of technical difficulties, we're on the air.
Yeah.
Well, Marissa, welcome.
Hi.
Yeah, you were just saying that you had your first race in a year earlier today.
Yeah, it was just a 60. There was only 3 people in the race because we can only have 10 people in the facility. So it was really weird vibes. There was like no one else there, but I still actually had like the nerves and everything because it was kind of weird just like feeling out a race again and like something that actually kind of counted. So yeah, I mean, I'm not like overly thrilled with the way it went, but I'm glad I got the opportunity to kind of like get the first one out of the way because I know like here on out I can just like continue moving forward and keep getting faster. I know I'm a lot faster also than like what I performed tonight. So I'm just going to take it as a win and learn from it and just continue moving forward. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to the months to come. It's just like a really stressful time because there's just a lot of uncertainty with like all of our competitions and everything. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Nice.
Love it.
When's the last? So your last race in a year. What was your race a year ago like in comparison to today? Was there people in the last one? Was it still kind of in the same state?
It was much different. There was probably about like 60 girls running in the 60. So, you know, it's always like a popular event for indoor. And it was at U of T and there was like tons of people around and it was like obviously a lot higher energy and stuff. And then we had today, it was at York. There were 4 officials, 3 athletes, and that was it.
So how does it work? Do you guys do them just kind of run in and run out? There's no pre-track running warm-up station?
Yeah, so we get about like an hour and a half. So we basically have an hour to warm up. Then we'll do like a 60 round 1. And then at 5:30, we did a 60 round 2. So within the 30 minutes, you got 2 runs, which is great. But yeah, again, it was just like really weird vibes because there was no one else around. There was only 3 people running. And like the one girl beside me was my teammate and the other girl, we like train at the same facility. So it wasn't like, it was weird because I did have those nerves, but it was also like I was looking around, I was like, no one's here. This is so weird. It just feels like another day at practice because it's also where we're training right now as well. So yeah, it was weird. that's the best.
No, I get it.
How have you been able to keep up with? You said you're training. It's the same place that you are training. Have you been? Has your training program continued like through the past few months? Has it changed? Have you had to slow down as a result? And has it?
I wouldn't say we haven't had to slow down at all because we have the facility at York University with the 200-meter track, 110-meter straight. So that's been a blessing to have, as well as like the Athletics Canada East Hub, which is like one of our national training centers. We have like our full weight room, like full access to like all the resources we need, like massage, chiro, physio, sports psych, nutrition. Like we have all of that available to us right now. Having had said that, I would have been to like 2 warm weather countries by now for training camps. So I'm kind of struggling a little bit with the winter blues, I guess you can say, because this is the most winter I think I've had to endure in like years. So I'm so spoiled saying that, but that's just like, I guess, the reality that I've had the last like few years of my life, and kind of like navigating the space now of being indoors, continuing to train on a 200-meter track as opposed to a 400-meter track. It's definitely been a little bit challenging, and also kind of maintaining that fire, I guess you can say, to training every single day has been a little more challenging. But again, I just like remind myself I'm so grateful to have like the facilities that I do have access to. So although we can't travel right now, I am still really grateful for what we have. So I can't complain. I think it's important to put things into perspective.
Oh, definitely, definitely. Do you guys have to get tested at all when you're training or before any of these major events? Like you said, this is the first event, right?
Yeah, so they're calling this like the Athletics Ontario like high performance series. So basically the only people that have the opportunity to run in these are whoever's like training at the Athletics Canada East Hub right now, basically. They're not like allowing other people to like join the races and stuff like that, just because like obviously COVID, we could only have 10 people in the entire facility at once. So just like the logistics of an actual track meet happening right now are so complicated. But yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought, but kind of going back to just like having those small numbers, it's really difficult to kind of get that done right now. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Don't worry, I lose my train of thought almost on every single episode, and we've done what, like 90 of these, Rick, maybe more.
Actually, this I think is 99.
Come on.
I think this is 99.
It's fitting that you have two Greeks on it.
Yeah, of course we do. There's Greek count number one. We were joking before we got on air. I'm like, I wonder how many times.
I don't know if you can tell from my last name, I am also Greek.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Rick's like, I wonder how many times it's going to come up that Greece is the best and all that. I was like, I'll tell you.
Of course. What's the best place in the world? Mykonos is the best place to travel.
So obviously, not to digress too much, because obviously we want to talk about the track, but Rick's actually come to my hometown in Greece, and Rick, it's the best place in the world, right?
Center of the universe. Center of the universe. Nyata.
Yeah.
I went to the Panaidi.
I wanted to go there when I found out that like all of our training camps were kind of put on pause. So I was like, oh my God, why don't I just move there for the next while and like live with my uncle and you know, kind of just like enjoy the hot weather and everything. But it's so hard to, first of all, I would never drive in Greece. So not having a car would be so difficult to like kind of get to like training and stuff like that. But I was definitely considering going and staying there for the next few months until I can compete in Europe. So that was definitely at the top of my mind.
I was in the same. I mean, I'm obviously not an athlete, but I was just debating going and spending the whole summer and winter there, because in hindsight, probably should have gone. I was kind of like worried at first, but yeah. Anyways, that's probably the one thing I'm like. I've been fortunate enough that I can go almost every summer, more or less. I've like go with our family every summer, but this is that was the first summer I hadn't gone in a while. And it's funny, I said, I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna go in 2020. I've been fortunate enough to go every year. Let me take a break, go somewhere else. As soon as COVID hit, I was like, wow, I really want to go to Greece now. Like, this kind of sucks, and it kind of made me want to go more, even though I planned not to go at all. It was, but kind of sucked, but it's okay. It'll still.
Marissa, where's your family from in Greece?
They're from Kalavrita, so like in the mountains. Yeah.
So is that near Sparta or near Athens?
We're close to Athens.
Okay.
Yeah,
For
we're
us
not
non-Greeks.
an hour and a half to 2 hours, I would say. But yeah, it's like mountains, farmland. Like not very many people know about it.
Yeah, that's like our town. When Rick came, it's so our town is very, very small. It's like 500 people, but it's surprisingly lively. Like a lot of surrounding areas come in, and I remember Rick came. We had you know what a panagidi is?
Yes, that's my favorite thing to go to.
I told you it's a thing, Rick.
Okay, so let me tell the story.
Tell the story, Rick.
So George's cousin is also named George. There's two George Butsalsis. So it's George, he's GB1, and then we have little George, who's technically like twice the size of us. But anyways, so me and little George traveled together. So we got off the plane, let's call it Friday morning. I took 2 sleeping pills before I got on, right when we got on the plane. So I was like, I'm going to wait till we eat. So we ate, but the problem is the food didn't come for like 3 hours. Then I took the sleeping pill, and I didn't know when you take it with food, it takes longer to kick in. So I slept on the plane ride, but we got off the plane and I couldn't keep my eyes open. Like we're in line in customs, I'm falling asleep. We're sitting down to get our bags, I'm falling asleep. I fall asleep everywhere. So we have the 2-hour drive from the airport to Nyata. 2 hours, George, give or take?
No, more, like 3.5, maybe more. 3.5?
So slept the whole car ride. We got to Nyata, slept. So we wake up, it's a panayiri. So at this point, I'm like, I've slept for, honestly, 18 hours, basically straight. So we get there, we're sitting down at the table, we're having locomotos.
Yes, yeah.
Locomotas. Yeah, so we're having those. We've got some beer. We're having a good time. And whatever, I'm maybe like 10 beers deep and like 8 boxes of these little fried donuts deep. And I'm like, oh my God, my eyes are starting to shut. And the problem is I couldn't control it. So I'm sitting upright at the table just, yeah, I'm here, guys.
The best part is like, so in our town with the panayiri is it's so small in the little like square in the platea, and the music is so loud, like it's deafening. And Rick is asleep, like snoring, sitting upright. People around them are like, who's this, like this random guy you brought here? Can't even stay awake for the best party of the year. And it's kind of been a running joke in our family now. Like the whole village knows him. He's like a celebrity in Greece.
I'm a celebrity everywhere I go. Hello, the Pals Podcast.
But that actually is a good kind of little segue there because I wanted to ask, and I read somewhere that you're a Krinos sponsored athlete. How does that spot? That's probably like the best sponsorship, and I also know you're associated with Nike, but I'll take Krinos over that. So how did that come about? Like tell us about that.
So our CEO of Athletics Canada, he actually is like childhood friends with Mr. Georgiadis, who is like the CEO of Krinos. So they, they were talking one day, and they were talking about, like an athlete to sponsor and everything. Like they thought it would be really cool to kind of get into that area, and they obviously knew that that the CEO that he's friends with is part of Athletics Canada, and so he immediately thought of me because he's like, she's the only Greek girl I know that runs at that level and that would probably want to represent your company. And so basically, like, my agent just like started chatting with them, and we had a meeting, and that was pretty much it. And then now I have a lot of feta and all my favorite things that I eat. We were already Krinos stans before, so it was just the best thing ever.
Yeah.
Your family was like, yes, let's go. Yeah. Lifetime supply.
Your parents are like, these finally, all these years of waking up early for trainings, all that finally paid off. Lifetime supply of feta. I can tell you right now, if I was a good enough athlete and I got my parents a lifetime supply, like just Krinos whenever, they would be like, you're our favorite child. Like you can go wrong.
Yeah, it's so fun when they like send a shipment, because there's this like massive Krinos truck that like shows up in front of our house, and it's like people are probably thinking like, what the heck are these people getting? Like they're getting like door delivered, like all this like prime Greek food.
Rick, just so you know, Krinos is like the best feta. Like you go, like my parents, we go out of our way to we go to Costco just to get it, because like everywhere else the feta's like Krinos is like the gold standard of feta cheese.
That's it. That's the goat of the Greek cheese, the feta cheese.
Literally also made a goat milk, so yeah, it's literally the goat.
Yeah.
I'm sure Elaine knows all about it.
Sure.
Elaine's my mom, who's definitely listening. Shout out Elaine again every single episode.
Okay. Moms are like we have a lot of listeners, but our moms are diehard fans of every episode.
Yeah. Well, Marissa, tell us, I guess, so you've got Krinos, which is obviously a big one. How did Nike happen?
Okay. So
I love sorry to cut you off. I love when like people laugh before telling a story, because you're like, this is a good one.
I mean, yes, like it just like came about really randomly. So October of 2019, my agent like sent me a text message. He was in Doha for the World Championships. I was preparing for the Dubai World Championships at that time, and I don't know, like prior to this, we were approaching a lot of different like shoe brands, like to get a shoe deal, like Under Armour, Adidas. Like no one was really like kind of taking on to it. Like para athletes are still a very like untouched space in Canada. Like I'm the first female Nike athlete that's also a para athlete. So it's a very
Congrats. That's sick.
space. And so yeah, like my agent like texted me and he's like, Nike wants to sign you. And I was like, hold on, where did this come from? Because I thought this wasn't gonna happen. Like I thought maybe like after Tokyo, like my goal is to medal, so like hopefully a medal, then like things would maybe start to come up and whatnot. And he said, no, yeah, they really wanted to sign you. They think it's important to have like more para representation in Canada and the Canadian market. So I was like, that's huge. Yes, I would love to sign with them. So and I always I've always been a Nike girl. Like ever since I was like a little kid, I always loved watching like the Nike commercials, and like my biggest goal is like looking at that. I was like, I want to be in one of those commercials when I'm older, because that just meant like you achieved a certain standard of like holding a certain amount of like influence where you're impacting people in a positive way, because that's how I felt deeply when I was watching those commercials, because I knew those like athletes worked so hard to get to where they were, and that was just like my biggest goal, one of my biggest goals. And so kind of like signing with them and getting a whole bunch of opportunities with them. Like I walked in their kit drop for New York Fashion Week at the start of 2020 in front of Drake, Travis Scott, Kendrick Lamar. Like it was actually insanity. So I think just like signing with them, it's been amazing. Just like all the opportunities they've given me, the platform that I've been able to speak on that they provide is incredible. It's just another way that I can share my story on a bigger platform, and to help educate people more on parasport and make para athletes more known. So I'm very grateful for that partnership.
I love that. That's great.
That's cool. I mean, even the fact that like I'm speaking very partially. I only wear like literally anything at leisure wise Nike. It's all, I mean, like I think all three of us have Nike on right now.
Yeah.
Cool. Mine I didn't do this purposely. Like, I'm not one of those like only like stripes till or checks till I die kind of people. I'm a whatever's on sale at Costco kind of guy. But yeah. Georgie's a diehard checks over stripes or whatever the phrase is.
I mean, I don't know what I said. I just really like Nike. I love their stuff. But I think it's really, besides that point, I think it's really, really cool that like that you wanted to do it for the reason like you believe in the brand as well and what they stood for. And I think that's really cool, because obviously it goes without saying Nike stand like they're not like just a sports brand. They stand for a lot, and they take a lot of they do, you know, put their name on a lot of, I guess, like important matters, social matters. I don't know what term I would use, but yeah, and it obviously recent years you've seen it escalate more. So that's really cool that number one, that you dreamt of doing that as a kid, and that like, now you have the opportunity to kind of be a face of that. So honestly, good for you. That's really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think just like how they really push for equality is something that I definitely have aligned myself with, and honestly couldn't see myself like aligning with other brands, because they just like really push the forefront of challenging like the norm. And I love that, because my whole life I think I grew up in a society that wasn't built for people like me, and I didn't see people that looked like me not often at all. So just to be that example and to have that opportunity to be that example for someone else, especially in Canada, because I just feel like it's still an untapped market here. There's so much potential for growth in parasport, para-athletics. So yeah, that's why I'm just like really grateful.
Oh, good. That honestly is amazing, especially that you're the first female para athlete. And is it I'm assuming in Canada, right?
Yeah, the first Canadian female para athlete to be sponsored by Nike.
Yeah, because we just had Tyler McGregor, who's also another para athlete, and he said that he was having trouble finding some sponsorships with some of the bigger brands because para athletes aren't on that same level, which to me doesn't make sense. I love all Olympians. I don't like, you don't know this, and again, I'm gonna say this because I say it every time. I have like Olympians are the coolest people in the world to me, just because, you know, they're the best of the best in the world, you know, competing on that stage. So yeah, I think that Paralympians or Olympians, it doesn't matter. They're still the best of the best. So George, I cut you off there.
Yeah, no. Actually, as you're talking, I wrote a couple things down. One of the things you said was like it was one of your one of your biggest but not your biggest goal. I mean, we probably know the answer, but what is your biggest goal?
To be the world champion at what I do. I want to break a world record. I want to get a gold medal. I want to do all of that. I'm still very young, but I've also been in the sport for a long time. It's like my 9th season that I've been doing this. I started when I was 12. My first national team was when I was 15. So I feel like I've had a lot of experience through all of this, but the best I think is yet to come, honestly, because they say like track athletes peak at around like 26, 27 years old. So I have yet to hit that, like very far from that. I have so much more in me. So every year is like a learning process and a growth process. I mean, I've dealt with a lot of challenges over the last few years. So yeah, just kind of like navigating through this space and like learning more about myself as a person and an athlete, and just kind of like sticking to my values and to continue to grow, I think has been a challenge, but a very rewarding challenge at the same time. So I just want to continue to like better myself every single day. And at the end of the day, I think about just like setting personal bests, doing my very personal best, and hoping that lands me where I want to go.
Awesome. I wanted to rewind a little bit. So you said you started this is your 9th season. You started when you were 12. What inspired you to become a runner, a sprinter?
So I was always like very infatuated with track and field, but I did like every other sport. When I was younger, I did soccer, I did tennis, skiing, gymnastics, basketball, like literally everything else. And I loved soccer. I thought I was going to play soccer forever. I played till I was 15 years old. And track was something that, again, like when I was younger, I was always really interested in, but I didn't have a running blade. I couldn't really get one at the time. So wasn't something I did competitively. And my parents wanted me to stick with team sports until I was a little older, just because it's tough. Like being in an individual sport is very tough, especially when you specialize in it as well. So yeah, like my dad always took me to like high school track meets. He's a high school principal. So he would take me to watch like some of his students run, and like one of his students like used to run for Team Canada, who was like my future teammate at that time, like Marlon Allen. And so I was always so like in awe with watching them all the time as like a young girl, that I was like, I really want to do this. I would always do track and field at school every single year in elementary school, and I did pretty well. Like I'd make the city finals and everything, and I was like the only kid with a disability. But then it was Stephanie Reed, who currently runs for Great Britain. She has the same disability as myself. She has amputation below the knee on one leg. And I had known her since I was a baby, because we met at a Warramps Champs conference when she had lost her leg in a boating accident. And so I kind of always knew about her, and then seeing her kind of starting up track and getting a running blade and then going to the Paralympics in 2012. That was really, really inspiring to me. And so that's when I really wanted to get into track, and I saw what was possible, and I knew more about the Paralympics, and I learned more about the Paralympics. And that's kind of where I started to navigate that space and that pathway for myself. And I think everything else kind of just like took place from there.
Wow. That's really crazy. That's honestly like good for you to pursue that and like be so passionate about it.
Well, I want to, like, when you were a kid, so you were just always an athlete. There was never a part of you where you said, you know, like, I have a disability. This is too tough. I'm not gonna do it. It seems like you played every sport. You did everything under the moon or under the sun, whatever the expression is.
I did, and I was the only kid with a disability like partaking in any of the sports I did. Soccer was my like one true love for a very long time. I'm in a soccer family. I had a cousin that played in Division II in the Premier League, and my dad played a high level of soccer in Canada, and my sister plays soccer, and you know, it's just always about soccer here. And I loved playing, but then I just kind of stopped loving it as much as I started like loving track. But yeah, like I think I just grew up in that environment of like sports. So I didn't really have a choice, but it was like definitely my calling and my passion, because even though I had no other choice when I was younger, my parents always like threw me into everything. I like really did have a love for like everything I tried and everything I did. So yeah, that's just like definitely something that I've identified with my whole entire life.
Did when you were young coming up through sport, did you face like, and I guess on the level you competed at, it seems like, you know, you're an athlete. Obviously, I'm guessing you're competing at like a fairly high level, or at least you're a competitive person. But did you face adversity? Was it like when you're really young, is it, you know, was it like, oh, you know, I'm not like one of these kids or anything like that? Was it tougher, or did you just kind of acclimate and like, you know, were people accommodating at that age? Like how was that in your youth days?
Yeah, I think I was very fortunate to live in a community that like always supported me. I was never bullied in elementary school, high school. I was always encouraged by my peers and my friends. But and then my dad, like every soccer team that I was like every rep soccer team that I was on, he was like my coach. So I guess that kind of helped. Like I never had to deal with like a coach that was like discriminatory or didn't like include or kind of like turn me away for any reason. But I always had this like desire in me to prove that I was better than everybody else. So I always just like worked really hard and tried really hard. And I think that definitely like shows precedent to like the person I am today. It's just like I always push to be like the best version of myself. And yeah, I would never say I had like a very tough experience growing up, but there were times like I remember when I was doing my very first year of track, and that was when I had like my running blade and everything, and I was actually like when you have going from like an leg to a running blade, it kind of like opens up this whole new world of opportunity, because it's like you automatically just get so much faster because it replicates more of what a actual human foot can do. So I think because of that, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I was feeling really great about myself. And then I went to like the city finals. I think I came third in the city finals for running long jump. And there was like someone on the side. I can hear them just talking about how I had an advantage because I had that special leg. And this was like a parent of a kid. And at the time I was like, what do you mean special leg? Like I'm missing my leg. Like how is this an advantage over? And I think she was just salty because I like beat her kid. But I mean,
You should have flipped her the bird.
like 12-year-old.
Imagine a 12-year-old flipping off a parent.
Yeah, so I did hear like little sly comments like that, but never anything to really bug me too much. So yeah, that I guess that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
On and kind of on that same vein, when you are on the track and, you know, competing and there's people around or even your competitors, what's your persona? Are you like someone who's very stoic? Do you talk shit? Like what? How do you act when you like when you get into the line? Like how are you? Yeah.
She's laughing. She's laughing. She's got something.
I don't know, like people. Okay, so the other day, my boyfriend told me, he's like, you know, you're like an intimidating person, right? And I was like, wait, what? I thought I came across like really nice. Like I thought I was always a friendly person, and I like to think I like treat people with kindness all the time. But he's like, yeah, like I think some people think like you're really intimidating, and I was like, no, there's no way. I'm like 5'4", like I'm like, there's no way. I'm like 5'4" little child, like there's no way. But I can kind of see how I can send off that vibe sometimes, especially when I'm in my training environment, because I am like pretty an intense person. But I'm also like that friendly person at the same time, where I'm like talking to my competitor, I'm like, hey, like how's it going? Like how have you been since the last time I saw you? Like I will kind of do that, because it also like makes me feel a little bit better, just like kind of being a little more casual. So I think I'm a mix of both. Like I'm intense, but I'll also kind of like chat with people around me and like make light of the situation, because it kind of takes the pressure off, and I'm like, I'm here for fun. Like that is like the first reason I do this, is because I enjoy it. So it's like I take it seriously, but at the same time I have fun with it and I enjoy what I do.
That's awesome. I can just picture you getting up to the blocks, giving someone a dirty look, and like, oh yeah, how was your weekend? Remember the last time I beat you? Yeah, I'm good too, thanks. Oh man. Okay, so I want to get into, I guess in high school, that's when you got the running blade.
It was like grade 7, so like middle school.
Okay, and that's when it really took off, and you were like, this is what I want to do. I'm good at this. I'm gonna stick with this. Soccer is more of a secondary sport now.
Mm-hmm. It was. I did both for 4 years, and it was hard. I was training 4 days a week in track, and then like 3 days a week in soccer. And sometimes I would go from track practice to soccer practice.
And your legs are jello.
Yeah, and I was also a goalkeeper as well. So I would do like these intensive like goalkeeping training sessions that would just like blast me with this like crazy Greek guy. So
There's number two, the second mention.
So yeah, and like he was also like friends with my dad. So he was always super hard on me. So that was very, very tough. But I was able to manage for the time like through grade 7, 8, 9, 10. But then once I reached grade 10, and then I actually started making national teams then. So I was like, okay, this is a lot. I think I gotta pick one. Soccer was starting to become a little too like dramatic for me. Like we're kind of hitting that age, like 15 years old, where girls start to like lose interest. And like I've always been a very intense, like athletic and intense person. So like when other people don't take things seriously, it like really angers me. So I think we were starting to get to that point. And I started losing interest in the sport as well. So it's like, you know what, if I'm not going to give this my all anymore, I can't continue. And I also knew that I had like so many great opportunities in track. So that's where I was like, okay, I think it's like an appropriate time to pack it in. Like I've played this sport for 13 years. I gave it a go and it was fun while it lasted, but it was time for a change. So that was kind of like when I transitioned.
You said 15. So is 15 very young to be on the national team?
Yes.
Okay. So at what age were you? So you're competing against 18, 19-year-olds?
When I was, my first Worlds was in 2015. I turned 16 at the competition, so I have a late birthday. So technically I was 16. And I think everyone else was at least 20 and up.
Okay. So you were the child of the tournament.
Yes, like in race, and then on our Canadian team as well. Like I've always been the baby, and I think I was really used to that. But it also kind of like pushed me to grow up a little bit quicker. I think I've always been like a pretty mature person. Like my parents would always make jokes like talking back about when I was really young and how like I was like 3 going on 30. So I think like it never really was an issue for me being like so young with all these older people around me at the time, because I felt like I was like in my element, like this is me, this is where I should be. And yeah, it was definitely like intimidating though, like, but then a little part of me was always like very ignorant when it came to like world competitions at that age, because I didn't know any better. Like I didn't know who I was racing against. I was like, I just thought, oh, these are just like other competitors and I'm just gonna do my thing. It's actually like the mental game's a lot harder now than it was when I was 15, to be honest.
So where'd Rick go? Can't see him anymore.
The laptop almost died. I just got a notification. I was like, oh shoot, I gotta run over.
What a guy.
It was charging, but the block it was charging to wasn't turned on. Not my fault, because I didn't plug it in last night, Georgie.
Yeah. So going in, like, I guess 2 things on this. Like going in, I guess being like younger, I mean, not to say naive, but obviously like it's your first competition. So do you think that helped you like stay more calm and just not overthink everything? Or what did you think that then you got there and you're like, oh shit, maybe I didn't realize how serious this is gonna be? Like how was it when you first got there?
Yeah, I think exactly how you described it. Like I was like naive going into it and I didn't know any better. And I think I was still naive when I was there, but obviously like it became more real. But again, like because parasport is not as mainstream as Olympic sport, you don't necessarily know who like the superstars are. So when I was walking around like my competitors, I had no idea that this was the world record holder or this was this. So I was just like, again, like very naive to the whole situation. So in terms of like my mental performance, looking back, it was a lot easier then because I didn't know any better and I kind of just did my thing. But now kind of like being at 21, being a seasoned veteran.
A wily vet at 21.
It's a lot tougher now because I'm a lot more hyper aware, not only of myself, but like the people that surround me. And it's easier to, I was always that young girl that came in and started like beating the older girls. But now there's also like younger people that are starting to come in and are running like just as fast and making teams as well. So kind of being in this position now, I feel like I'm in the middle ground where I'm not like on the older spectrum, but I'm not on the younger either. So it is interesting kind of like how this has transitioned in the last few years. But I think every day I'm continuing to work on like my mental performance and just like kind of coming back to focusing on myself and kind of believing in my process and trusting my training and just like, again, kind of forgetting about what other people do. And at the end of the day, track is an individual sport. It's a selfish sport a little bit. And if I can't, believe in myself at the end of the day, then it will dictate how I perform. So it's just it's a battle of trying to balance out those, that self-doubt and when stuff like that kind of creeps in. But I think for the most part, after all the experiences I've had in the last few years, I've had like 2 major injuries. I got disqualified in my Paralympic debut race, tore my hamstring twice. So I think that just with all these experiences that I've kind of had to overcome, it's helped shape the athlete I am, but also helped shape my mental performance as well when dealing with tough situations and how to handle them moving forward.
How much do you would you say that the mental performance affects your ability on the track? Because you mentioned even earlier that your dad wanted you playing team sports, and I'm going to take a guess that it's because he wants you to have friends, and I don't want to say blend in, but he wants you to have that normal kind of life of playing with friends and the team sports, because it does affect your mental state, right? Playing alone is a lot more difficult than playing with others. So how much does the mental aspect affect your game and your performance?
I would say now it's hard to kind of give a percentage because I feel like it could be different on any given day. For my race today, I would say it affected like 60% of my performance today because it was a whole year since I raced last, and you kind of get these nerves and like you second guess yourself a little bit, and sometimes even like on that first one you kind of even forget your training a little bit and like what you've been doing, and everything kind of like can go numb a little bit. I think day to day in training, it sometimes can be difficult because I'm the only short sprinter in my training group. I train with 2 long sprint girls, so they run the 400. So on the days that we have like our longer run days, they're doing like 300s and 400s when I'm doing like 200s, because obviously I'm only a 100, 200 meter sprinter. I don't need to be running 400 meters. So often those workouts are done by myself because all of our other teammates that we typically train with can't train at the facility right now. So it's that like constant like loneliness, I guess you can say, just like with the current state we're in. Usually I'm used to running like a big pack of girls, and it's like very powerful and you feel like stronger and you have like all these people around you to like lift you up and like to push you and to keep going. So I think right now that's been a little bit of a challenge for me, is kind of just like getting used to being more on my own and like really, really pushing myself to run faster by myself. So yeah, the mental side of track is huge because it is just yourself. At the end of the day, like you can train as many hours as you can feel as fast as you can, but when it comes to like actually competing and getting in that mind space of knowing that, okay, just like putting everything aside and actually knowing that you can do it is a lot easier said than done. And again, I was just like, I mentioned it before, like that belief in yourself is so important yet so difficult to do. So For me, like, I think after having like a few races in the beginning of this season, I'll be able to kind of get back into that mindset of just like knowing that I can do it and I can believe in myself, and you know, knowing that there'll be a day that's not as great as the day before, but you know, just being able to take that and continue moving forward and knowing that the next day is going to be better. So yeah.
One thing I want to add to, so like to your point, you know, when you're training by yourself, it's got to, you know, you're obviously feeling like you're on an island, I guess, sometimes. But I would ask on the flip side, you know, the 100, 200 are typically really exciting events. Everybody, you know, wants to see people fire out the blocks, and it's, you know, the fastest, whatever they call it, the 100 meter. What do you call it? Anyways,
most exciting 10 seconds in sport, something like that, right?
So like,
sounds like my sex game.
Yeah, like when you're standing there in the blocks and like you're competing on the national level or on the global, the world level, like it's gotta feel like it's all worth it. And it's like, okay, I'm not lonely here. Like I'm here to, you know, put a show on it and take that medal home.
Yeah, I think like for me, I'm definitely a person that likes to put on a show. I love running in front of people. Like people are like, how did you run against like 40,000 people? And I was like, I loved every second of it. I think it's way more fun. It's so like the adrenaline rush you get is insane. Like when I competed at London Olympic Stadium in 2017, and it was full for the 100-meter semi, I think I ran. And yeah, just like that rush, and obviously being Canadian, everybody loves you. So you get like this massive cheer. So yeah, I love it, and I love getting to that moment because it is like all that time of like the toughness. It's like so worth it. And my coach always says something, you know, like it gets easy later, and like it's such a true statement because like during all these months of hard training, it's so tough. Like I can't even sugarcoat it. Like there are days that are very tough, and you know, some days are obviously better than others, but for the most part, training is hard. But I still love it. Like I love pushing myself, and I love kind of seeing the trends, especially in a sport like track. You really see your progress day to day and how you've started from one space and ended up in another. So yeah, just like being able to go through this whole process and then finally make it to that final race, where it really, really means something, is very special, and it makes all that stuff that happened before it worth it.
What I got a kind of random question, but I'm just very curious about it now. What music do you listen to pre-race?
Drake.
I just picture you got like Future and Drake blaring in the background, and you're like ready to rock and roll.
Right here.
That's it. You're just rocking it.
Yeah.
You got the Nike plug though, so.
Drake, Travis Scott, yeah, Future, The Weeknd, yeah, those are like definitely my go-tos. I love listening to rap and hip hop, even some R&B like Chris Brown, Usher, like throwbacks from like the early 2000s.
Oh, Usher throwbacks, those are bangers. You remind me, literally, it's like on my I listen to it almost every single night when I shower. It's like one of my shower songs. I don't know why. Random fun fact.
I've known you for a decade. I never knew that.
So I have the XX. I have a couple tracks from the XX. I have Usher. You Remind Me. A couple other songs from that album, 8701 or whatever. Yeah, a couple like old school Usher songs. The couple Rufus songs, the XX, London Grammar, and Bob Moses. It's like a weird compilation of just random songs. Oh, I guess a lot of those go together, and Usher's just kind of tossed in there.
Yeah, I love it because like it's so funny. Like listening to like songs from back in like 2004 to 2008, I was like, I had no business singing these songs when I was in elementary school. Like, why was that allowed? It's like all these songs so dirty and inappropriate, and my like 8-year-old self was jamming out every like basketball practice. Like I remember it clearly. There's just like certain songs too that are so nostalgic and make me think of like going to specific like trainings, like going to basketball practice or going to soccer practice. Like I remember hearing all those songs on the radio. It's so nostalgic to me. I love it.
It's like kids singing "I Can't Feel My Face" like by The Weeknd, like in elementary school.
Yeah.
They don't know what that song's about.
On that kind of same kind of thing, do you have any idols you look up to, or any any pro athletes, anyone that really, that just you want to chase, be like them, inspires you?
Yeah, so I mentioned her earlier, but Stephanie Reed, she was like my very first role model in the sport of para track. And she always will be someone I look up to just because she's such like overall such a great human and really exemplifies standing for para sport and the Paralympic movement and really educating people on disability and everything around that. With being an athlete on top of that, she's just always somebody I've looked up to, and like I've wanted to hopefully like achieve the same things that she has. I would say like otherwise, I've also really looked up to Serena Williams. I feel like that's someone that like every young girl every young girl that was in sport looked up to at some point. And just like the way she paved that space for women, and I always like really was inspired by that. But I definitely think those were like my two role models growing up.
It's funny you mentioned Serena Williams because we haven't mentioned it, but me and George, we have an app. It's called Cast. And I posted a question there saying, after Brady won his 7th Super Bowl, do you think he's, the greatest athlete of all time? And so many people messaged me and wrote in the app, like, what about Serena Williams? What about Serena Williams? What about Serena Williams? And I said, yeah, she's got 23, I think she's got 23 majors, or what are they called in tennis?
Grand Slams.
Grand Slam. So she's got 23 Grand Slams, and she kills it. There's no one even close to her. You mentioned people are like, oh, what about, Tiger Woods? Okay, well, Tiger Woods doesn't have the most amount of, he's not even technically one of the greatest golfers of all time, right? Like he's up there, but him and Jack Nicholson, or Nicholas, whatever his name, they're kind of like the number 1, 2. Okay, you've got Jordan. Jordan's up there, but LeBron's basically almost there with him. Serena Williams and Michael Phelps are like those two athletes that stand far apart from everybody else. But yeah, it was just, you said Serena Williams, and it reminded me of that right away.
Yeah, I mean, I think this like debate of who the greatest athlete of all time is such a like nitpicky and like complicated conversation to have, because what really defines like what being a great athlete is so complicated. Because okay, so I'm in sport media, and this is like at Ryerson University, and this is a topic of conversation we always used to have and we'd always argue about, is like what defines a sport. And like you have all these like specific criteria. It's like, okay, you check off a box. So like being the greatest athlete, it's like the best stamina, the best fitness, the best strength, the most titles won. It's like there's all these different things that can kind of like come into play, that it's like such a complicated conversation. Like for example, Tom Brady, yes, he's had 7 Super Bowls, but, and this might be a little controversial, but football is only a North American sport. Nobody else in the world plays American football. And like he's the best at what he does, but in a very small space, if you will say. Whereas like soccer, for example, if you can like argue like Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo is like the best soccer player of all time, that's like a global thing that is played by billions of people around the world. So I think like it's a very complicated conversation, because like I kind of chuckle when Tom Brady said at the Super Bowl, like, we're the world champions, and I'm like, that's debatable, because like your sport is
we have a Tom Brady hater over here.
I'm not a hater. I think he's the fact that he like picked up and went to a team that wasn't even as good, brought Gronk with him, and then won is pretty impressive. Obviously, he's an amazing athlete. I have no doubts about that. But just like when you're looking at the grand scheme of things, it's like it's the NFL. It's played in America. And I just like find it funny, because I think it also kind of relates to how like a lot of Americans think they are the center of the universe, and like kind of like that comes into play, where they're like, we're the world champions. I was like,